Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. I'm Coach Castle. This is my good friend Kathy.
Hello.
Back again. We're going to be answering your questions. Now, a warning, this video is going to be a little bit different than some of the other ones. We're going to get technical in this video. We're going to start breaking down biomechanics a little bit for you guys. Going to be separated into 3 different videos probably, so that you guys can break it up and digest it over time. It is more helpful that way as opposed to just watch a whole video that's an hour long. So anyways, we're going to get into it. Biomechanics is probably a term most people haven't even heard. Let me just tell you what biomechanics is. It's the study of physics and how they relate to human anatomy. So the first thing that you're going to have to understand is that the human body is comprised of levers. Now, when I say levers, I'm referring to bones or groups of bones. So it's very helpful to think about yourself, at least temporarily, as just an organic machine. So let's call your muscles as ropes, and we're going to refer to your bones as levers, just to keep this simple for everyone to understand. So all of your bones are subject to the laws of physics. Everything on your body is subject to the laws of physics. So once you're able to understand that fact, you can revolutionize your training in a whole new way. Now, I'm going to do my best to explain this so everyone can follow along. I'm sure I'll be addressing a lot of questions after this video. But to start with, we're just going to do a really simple, basic demonstration of how levers work that everybody can follow along with. So, Kathy, would you mind picking up that sledgehammer?
Well, certainly.
So, as you guys can see, this is just it's real simple. It's just a grungy old 10-pound sledgehammer. There's nothing special about it. If I take the sledgehammer and I hold it like this, it's very easy to actually just balance it. It doesn't go anywhere. I'm requiring no effort to do this. So this would be a neutral lever. This 10-pound end of the hammer, let's just call it 10-pound weight. This would be the same thing as if you were holding a 10-pound weight at the end of your arm. So to demonstrate, the sledgehammer is the same distance as my hand. If I was to be holding it, it would be the same thing as a 10-pound weight. If you were to rotate it, you would notice that the stick is actually at the same place that my bicep connects to my arm. So it's a good representation. So it's still just 10 pounds, same thing as a 10-pound dumbbell. The shape of the weight doesn't matter, it's simply 10 pounds. Now, back to holding it here and it being a neutral lever. It's a neutral lever specifically because gravity is pushing straight down on it. Due to the fact that gravity is pushing straight down, this doesn't have to do anything. However, the second you take that out of alignment with gravity, even a little bit, I suddenly require a good bit of effort to hold it here, as you can see. How much effort? Well, it's hard to say like this, but we're going to get into that later. Now, as you lower it a little bit more, that becomes, I mean, you can't really tell, but I'm actually struggling. It becomes increasingly difficult.
I can tell.
It becomes increasingly difficult to hold it here. Why is that? It's because from this point up is where it was as a neutral lever. You've now added several inches of lever. Now, I understand that the lever is diagonal, however, the space is the same. Therefore, the lever is now an active lever, and as that active lever gets longer, it's a lot harder to hold, I should say. Now, just imagine, if you will, if this was, say, an extra 14 inches longer, it would be the same length as the rest of my arm here, okay? So, now we have a basic understanding of how levers work. Neutral, slightly active, more active, more active, more active, and then maximally active when the weight is parallel with the ground, or 90 degrees. So, this will be 0, this will be 90, and this would be 180, just so we're clear. Alright, so that's how levers work. Pretty simple. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic principle. So the next thing we're going to address is something called the resistance curve. So, would you mind holding that for me? So we're just going to pretend that Mr. Skeleton here, why don't you put him right here, hold him here. So Mr. Skeleton here, doing a bicep curl. So he's got a weight here, let's say it's a 10-pound weight, and he's doing a bicep curl. So, if you were to look at him, and look at this, you're going to see that in this position, he's at 90 degrees resistance, so this is going to be a maximally active lever, which means the load is going to be heaviest at this point, because this is when the lever is longest. Therefore, this is a maximally active lever. As he goes through the motion, he then goes down to 180, just like the sledgehammer, goes up to 90, and then he doesn't fully go up to 0, but he gets close to there. So the lever is still active at the top part of the motion. Now, what the resistance curve is something very simple. At the bottom of the resistance curve, when the lever is simply straight up and down with gravity, is a neutral lever, 0. However, as soon as you begin pulling it, it gets more active. Now, muscles are always going to be stronger at the beginning part of the movement and weaker at the top. That is a correct resistance curve. Now, there are many muscles which will move like this. However, due to the gravity in the place of your body, you will not be in a correct resistance curve. So for the biceps alone, this is a correct resistance curve. However, each one has a unique resistance curve in relation to gravity. Now, the important thing to understand about this, on top of the resistance curve, is something called mechanical disadvantage. Mechanical disadvantage is what happens when you're holding a weight here and you begin pulling in line with the resistance curve. Due to the fact that the bicep is pulling about 2 inches attached to the lower arm, it's very difficult for the bicep to actually move that lever because it's pulling at a disadvantaged angle. It's not pulling straight up over here. If it was, it would be very simple to lift it up. It's not. It's pulling from 2 inches here at the end of a very long lever. So it's difficult to do that. So as it gets up, more towards the middle where it's actually maximally hard, the bicep is actually stronger at that point because it's at more of a mechanical advantage. It's pulling more directly up. Now, as it goes up, again, it gets easier for the bicep because it's at more of an advantage. It's now pulling at an angle close to the bone this way as opposed to this way. So, that's all you guys really need to understand. I hope I kept that pretty simple. There are, of course, many more factors, but that's the high and the low of it. Now, we don't need the skeleton to demonstrate this, but there's one more factor to consider, and that's called reciprocal innervation. So, what that is basically opposite muscles cannot fire at the same time, which means they can't work at the same time. Some examples would be you can't curl your bicep and flex your tricep at the same time. You can't fire your quad and fire your hamstring at the same time. You cannot activate your chest and your middle trapezius at the same time. You can't activate your glutes and your hip flexors at the same hip extensors at the same time. These are simply muscles that are opposite each other on your body, meaning because they're opposite, they cannot fire at the same time. Now, these are all very important things to consider when selecting exercise, let's say. Once you understand these basic principles, it actually becomes very easy to select exercises, and even easier to tell which one's a perfect exercise and which one is an inferior exercise. Now, what I mean when I say perfect and inferior is pretty simple. If we understand physics and we understand anatomy, we can very, very easily figure out the perfect resistance curve for every lever. We can very easily figure out which muscles are worked. We can very easily figure out the perfect exercise that maximally uses the operating muscle. It's not even difficult to do. It's not. It's simply people are misguided. I'm not sure. I have a kind of understanding where the misinformation came from. It's kind of an interesting spin-off, so we'll touch on this briefly. So, weightlifting actually came about fairly recently. I don't want to tell you the exact day, but it was within like the last 200 or 300 years. Now, it was specifically developed as shows and feats of strength. in circus performances. That's where it actually originally came from. You would see gentlemen bending metal, picking up horses, 10 people pulling trucks. Yeah, well, there was trucks back then, but
carts,
lifting boulders and such. And then over time, the exercises that they were doing, which appeared to be, look at me, I'm a very strong person. They kind of took on a life and a following and a cult following of their own, contrary to science. Now, to be fair, science wasn't actually around at the time in relation to these things, but still, it actually goes against logic when you logically break it down. So, started with circus performers, ended up, I guess, bodybuilding kind of made exercise more mainstream, but there's many other things as well. I mean, the Olympics and sports and so on like that, people just want to be in shape and be healthy. But let's just specifically talk about building muscle, because building muscle is universal. There's no hidden secrets. There's no, it's universally applies to everybody. You don't get to tell me that physics don't apply to you, because they do.
Yes, they do.
You don't get to tell me that your anatomy is in some way special, because it's not. You don't get to tell me that you have a particular kind of alien muscle fiber I've never heard of, because you don't. So what I'm about to say does apply to you, who's listening to this. If you are a human being, you can, of course, disagree with me, but you're wrong. You can believe whatever you want, but I'm about to tell you the facts. So, building muscle and exercise selection goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
You want one exercise for each muscle. Now, which exercise do you want? The most effective one. Do you need to switch exercises from the most effective one? No. And why would you? It simply doesn't make logical sense. Why would you trade an exercise for your bicep? That is the perfect bicep exercise, perfect angle of resistance and everything else. Why would you trade that for an inferior exercise that puts you at a mechanical disadvantage, which takes away a percentage of the resistance curve and which sacrifices, everything? It doesn't make sense to do that. It only makes sense to perform the exercises which will maximally activate the muscle.
So you don't need 10 different exercises for a bicep.
No.
Or a tricep.
No.
Or your quads.
I really feel this is something I'll be addressing quite continuously on this channel, just because of the emails I get.
Right.
And from my clients as well, they say, we're going to talk about squats today, so we'll lead into it with this. Quite frequently,
That's fun stuff.
Well, quite frequently I have clients, and they'll say, a new client, and they'll show me a program from their previous coach.
Yes.
And I always ask them for this because
I did.
Because I always know it's going to be really screwed up. And actually, I kind of get a joke out of it. It's kind of a giggle almost. So here's a common leg workout that my clients will go through. And I'm sure many of you have done this as well. They will do squats. They'll do machine calf raises. They'll do seated calf raises. They'll do leg extensions. They'll do hamstring curls. They'll do, leg presses. Then they'll do lunges. They'll do reverse lunges. They'll do, I could actually keep going. So, I'll keep going. Here's the thing. All of those exercises, they all kind of sort of work the same muscles. To a degree.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense to do two exercises for one muscle. Because if you are, it's obviously not the correct exercise. When people train with me, and I will just have them do, and these are experienced people, experienced athletes, I will just have them do 1 or 2 or 3 at the most sets with the perfect exercises, and then I'll ask them, do you want to do any more? No.
I say no.
Can you do any more? No, they're shaking. I can't move my legs, or this is not possible. I usually exercise my legs for 2.5 hours. I do hundreds of pounds of squats. I say, yeah, but you're not being effective. We just did more in this one workout than you've done in the past year. Now, we did that in 45 minutes. Now, your job for the other 23 hours of the day is real simple. Eat to recover and take care of your life.
Yes.
It's not complicated. I'm digressing, sorry, but back to the actual exercises themselves. Now that we understand these couple principles, we're going to get into why it matters so much, why this is so important that you understand these things. It is so crucial for several reasons. I'm just going to list them. We're not going to go too deep into them. I'm just going to list them. Reason number one, the majority of exercises you are performing, yes, you. I don't need to know who you are watching this. The majority of exercises you are performing are not only wrong, but they're actually damaging you. Now, I know what everyone's going to say, but they've been working for me. I've been getting gains, this, that, or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a comparison with the squat real quick to address this point. We're going to talk about the squat in a minute, but I'm going to lead into it with this. With the squat, you essentially have three levers operating. You have your torso. That's one lever. You have your upper leg, or your femur. That's the next lever. And then you have the lower leg, the tibia. Okay? That's the third lever. When you're doing a squat, let's just talk the quad right now. Just the quad. If you do a perfect squat with your, let's say your legs are shoulder width apart, you're maximally using your angles, you allow your knees to go over your toes, which by the way you do want to do. I don't care what anyone says. You allow your heels to come up off the ground, allowing you to maximally use your levers in an effective squat, and say you're doing that with 300 pounds. How much load is your quad actually getting? Even with perfect form, your quad is only getting 30% of that load. That's it. That's it. So what's 30% of 300? It's just a little over 100. So anyways, so here's the question. You want to squat for 3 or 4 years, damage your body with spinal compression. By the way, you're probably squatting wrong anyway, so you're doing a lot more damage. Damage your bones, damage a lot, damage a lot of things for no real benefit. Or you could do the leg extension, again, proper angled leg extension. You will get 100% activation in your quad. So what does that mean? How much weight do you need on your quads with the leg extension to get 100% benefit? 100 pounds is the same, it's actually better than doing a 300-pound squat. Now, I already understand what everybody's going to say about isolation exercises versus compound exercises. You have to do compound exercises because for some reason isolation exercises are bad. That is not true. It's a fallacy. It's very foolish, and it's been disproven a long time ago. This is not new things I'm talking about. To say that by training your muscles in an isolated fashion, they don't know how to operate together after, is foolish. If you train your calves, hamstrings, and quads and glutes completely separately, which by the way is what I've been doing for years, and what all my clients do, you are more likely to make massive gains in a short period of time. Reason being, you are not putting your body beyond its ability to recover. Reason being, two, you're maximally using your muscles and levers in the most effective way. Reason three, a lot less time, more time to recover. A lot of, again, I'm going to stop. It's a lot of reasons. We're going to delve into it deeper later, but suffice to say, if you know what the perfect exercise is, why would you sacrifice it for another one? Because of your ego? Because it looks showy? Because you feel like a badass when you quarter rep 300 pounds? It's very foolish. If you want to have gains, and I say this all the time, if you want to make gains, if you really want to gain muscle, you really want to be healthy, leave your ego at the door. People come train with me, all of their weights immediately drop. You wouldn't believe how much they drop. I'll have somebody...
Mine drop.
Yeah, they drop like crazy. Yeah, they drop like crazy. Even my weights, I tell people the weights that I use exercise with, they're astonished. They say, what do you mean? What do you mean? That's all you use? Yeah, that's all I use. Yeah, that's it. You don't need massive weight. You need maximally effective levers. And once you understand that, it's very easy. So, let's get back to the squat. Back to reciprocal intervention. We talked about that with hamstrings and quads.
Yes.
When you're doing a squat, your hamstrings and your quads are both simultaneously trying to work. So what do you think happens? it feels very difficult. It is
That's why it hurts.
it is very difficult for your body because your body doesn't want to do that. It wants to work one or the other. It doesn't want to work both at the same time. Now I understand.
Well, and the lower back. Most people do it wrong,
Well, yeah.
and they hurt their backs.
Well, there's, again, a lot of reasons for the lower back pain. That is one of them. The main reason, we'll address that real quick so you understand out there. If you are doing squats and you have lower back pain,
You've done them wrong.
that is why. Or, conversely, could be other things that are silly, like deadlifts. We'll touch on deadlifts in a moment, but back to the squat.
Hurt yourself.
The reason that hurts your lower back, which by the way, the lower back's not really a thing. We've been over this.
Right.
This isn't the video for this, but
That's what hurts.
Well, that area.
When you get done
That area.
the wrong way.
Yes, but it's that area. It's not actually the lower back. The lower back doesn't exist. There is again, it's not the video for this, guys, but there is a muscle which goes from the top of your skull down to your pelvis, which is wrongly called the lower back. It is a very long muscle. It does not only work your lower back. However, people get pain there, specifically due to squatting, deadlifting, and other exercises. The reason for it with the squat is because, again, your torso is a lever. And when most people do a squat, and it's heavy, their big lever goes really far forward. Now, if we remember the sledgehammer, when that big lever is really far forward, all that torque is on your pelvis. All of it. So what happens when you're doing your squats? You go down the way you're supposed to, and then when you try to go up, your ass goes up first, your head stays down low, and then you just kind of grind it out. So that's dumb, and you know that's dumb, and me telling you that's dumb is not a surprise to you. So we need to stop doing that. That only comes from poor technique. It comes from using too much weight you're not ready for. It comes from ego lifting for no reason. And again, I'm going to go on record here and say I highly disagree with the squat as a weightlifting exercise. As a body weight exercise, I think it's wonderful. If you're a power lifter or an Olympic lifter, of course you're going to disagree with me. However, you're doing squats specifically as a sport. They don't care how much muscle you have. They don't care how much momentum you use. They don't care about those things. I'm in the business of building a healthy body with healthy muscle. I'm not in the business of damaging my bones, tendons, using momentum, swinging things wildly. I'm not in the business of overfeeding myself so I'm fatter so I can lift more weight. I'm not interested in that. It does not interest me in the slightest. I don't think it interests anybody else either. Not bad-mouthing powerlifters. It's a wonderful sport. I've trained powerlifters. It's not my cup of tea. I think it's kind of an ego-driven male supremacy sport. And it's fun. I did it myself for a while, but I grew out of it. Now I'm just interested in a healthy body and a long life and looking good, which is, I'm sure, what most people want. And
That's what they're looking for.
That's what I'm gearing
And
this
feeling
towards.
good.
Yeah, and feeling good. So